Yesterday we created fabrics. We created 3 different values of 2 colors. And today let's take a look at those. Before we do that, if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat for me and I will get to them. I do try to keep an eye on the chat, and I do want to thank you for joining me today. But let's go ahead and switch over to the other camera, to the overhead camera, and take a look at these fabrics. Before we do that, I'm going to say I'm not really that happy with them, but we'll talk about that. So let's go ahead and move over here. And we're going to start with the orange fabric, which is the one we created first. Now, in case you didn't join me yesterday and you haven't had a chance to watch the replay, what I did was we dyed one fabric full strength, and then we dyed 2 different values by diluting the dye. So this top fabric here is our full strength orange. Okay? So I mixed up the dye using the formula of 1 cup of water to 1 teaspoon of dye. So this is the full strength, and this middle one was dyed by adding 2 tablespoons of water. So let me back up a minute. So I mixed the dye full strength, and I dispensed it into some small cups, 4 tablespoons of dye in each cup. So this was the 4 tablespoons of dye. The middle one was the 4 tablespoons of dye plus 2 tablespoons of water. And this one here, the bottom one, was the 4 tablespoons of dye plus 4 tablespoons of water. And I'm not exactly happy with these. I don't think there's enough difference between the full strength and the first dilution. So to me, this is just too similar, and I don't really see it showing up on camera how different they are because they are so similar. So if I was to do this again, I would take my first dilution and add 4 tablespoons of water to that. And then for my second dilution, I would add at least 6, maybe 8 tablespoons of water, depending on how big a jump I wanted it to be between number 1 and number 2, or number 2 and number 3. I actually think if I remove number 2, I actually think this is a good jump between number 1 and number 3. I'm not sure how well you can see that on camera, but I think this is a good jump between the values. So this was 4 tablespoons of water added to the dye. I would do that as my first value jump and maybe add 6 or 8 tablespoons if I wanted to do another value jump. So not exactly thrilled with these. They do have some differences, but not enough in my opinion. So here we go with that, and it's been a while. So let me know in the comments if you, I see we just had someone join, and if you want, I can go back over these and explain the differences between them. So let me put them back the way I had them. So this top one is the full strength dye. The middle one had so the top one is full strength dye, which was 4 tablespoons of dye. The middle one had 2 tablespoons of water added to it to dilute it just a little bit. And this bottom one had 4 tablespoons of water added to the 4 tablespoons of dye to dilute it even more. As I was saying, I'm not exactly happy with this middle range. I don't think there's enough difference between the two, between the full strength and the middle one. I would have preferred this one be the middle one, and then maybe do another one with 8 tablespoons of dye. So there we go with that. So that's our orange. And let me bring on the purple one, which in my opinion is not really much better, but we'll see. So here we have the purple, and this is the secondary purple the color is called Grape from the manufacturer. This is the full strength, 4 tablespoons of dye. The middle one is 4 tablespoons of dye with 2 tablespoons of water. And there is a difference. I can see the difference on the screen and in person. And this one is 4 tablespoons of dye with 4 tablespoons of water. Still not enough difference between these two in my opinion. So I would have preferred this jump and another jump. So that's something to consider. There's all sorts of ways to create the different jumps. So you could do more than 3. You could do 5 or 7 or even 10. If I was doing this and I wanted to do 10 jumps in between, I would start with the 4 tablespoons of dye and add 1 tablespoon of water until I got down to pretty much 4 tablespoons. Let's see, my brain's not working now. So I would get to the point where I have definitely more water than dye. So that's pretty much it. So this is going to be a very short stream. I don't see any questions in the comments, but as I said, I'm not exactly thrilled with these, but there we go. If you have any questions, pop them in the comments for me, and I will go ahead and answer them. And if it's something I've already covered, I'll be happy to go back and cover it again. So this is what we did yesterday. And what I want to show you next is last week we dyed our secondary colors. We had a lot of dye left over. And I was debating whether I was going to use it up or just pour it down the drain because it would go bad on me. Well, I just can't bring myself to pour things down the drain. So what I did was I took some fabric that I had laying around the studio and I just poured the dye on the fabric. Scrunched it up and poured the dye on the fabric just so that I wouldn't have to pour it down the drain. These are not pieces of fabric that I would consider using in anything that I do, but I suppose if you were trying to create something dark and moody, you could use them. So this one here was using the pre-mixed colors from the manufacturer. So it was using strong orange, the grape for the purple, and emerald for the green. That's this green over here. Nothing I'm thrilled about, but that happens sometimes. And this piece was mixed or dyed with the colors that we mixed. So our colors that we mixed were a lot more muted than the pre-mixed colors. And as I said, this is just some fabric I had laying around. So you can see a little bit of the orange that we mixed here, which is a lot duller than the pre-mixed orange. And the purple was way duller. And the green is also a very dull green. So instead of pouring the dyes down the drain, I poured them on some fabric. Didn't get great results, or not results that I like. I'll probably end up giving these away because I don't keep things around in the studio that I don't use. But that's pretty much it for today's stream. Let me know if you have any comments, and go ahead and put that in the chat. So I'm going to go back to the face camera here, and the Wednesday streams are usually very short because it's just a case of where I show you the results from the day before, and there's not a lot of demonstration going on. And I see I forgot to clean up my background. But that's pretty much it for today. So I want to say thanks one more time for being here. This is a very short stream, and I hope to see you next week where we will take these same colors, the purple and the orange. We're going to take these same colors and we're going to mix them with gray. So next week, we're going to take these colors and dull them down a bit. And there's several ways you can do that. You can mix them with black, or you can mix them with gray, or you can mix them with a complementary color. We are going to mix these colors with gray to tone them down a bit next week. So definitely come back and check us out next week. I think you will enjoy next week's stream, and I hope to see you here. Thanks for watching today. Bye-bye.